Good evening. Good evening, everybody. Thank you very much for coming. I'm totally impressed. This is an amazing crowd. We are really excited to have all of you here and have our consultancy's coverage to present the findings for the downtown master plan. We have been working on this for almost a year already. We have a series of community meetings, presentations, stakeholder meetings, all sorts of community outreach, and we are getting to the final stages. So we want to present the ideas today and go over that and get your feedback to see if we can get this to the finish line. By the way, I'm Ana Maria Aponte. I'm the Development Services Director. Sorry, I didn't introduce myself, but I'm just excited to have all of you here and hear what is happening with the downtown. So I'm gonna just really quickly introduce Mr. Bernard Siskowicz, and he's gonna make his presentation. We want to hear from him and then after from you. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Ana Maria. It's a rainy day and everybody showed up, so thank you very much. I want to preface this by saying that this is a work in progress. This is not a final presentation by any means. We're basically dealing with the whole downtown of the city, including all the neighborhoods. So it's quite a bit of work. While Darius is setting us up, I wanted to share a couple of observations that I think might be interesting. They're certainly interesting to us. We were here in 2007, which is almost 20 years ago, creating this version of the zoning code and the vision plan that the city has been living with. Back then, Ana Maria was the project manager, and we were trying to figure out back then what will the next 20, 25 years look like. I have to say I'm really pleased with the way the city has grown and the beauty of it, the public investment, the private investment. I have to say it's far exceeded what we imagined, because back then this was, a much smaller city. It didn't really have a lot of vitality yet. It had conflict. It had problems. It had City Place, which was just starting, and Clematis was going through its own infrastructure changes, but maybe in a way suffering by what City Place was doing. There was a competition, and we'll talk a little bit about it, but basically our mission was to try to figure out how do we plan for a city that was doing well, but certainly not flying high. And how could we set it up so that we could make sure over time that it would not only survive, but be in better shape and allow for more and more opportunity. One of the challenges of development is to make sure that everybody has opportunity, but to make sure that no one property has more opportunity than the others. Because once that starts happening, it's just a race for absorbing all of the energy, and then nothing else happens around the city. So it's been, from my point of view anyway, and from our point of view on the team, it's been a really successful 20 years that has happened since the day that we started. So here we are again, and powers that be are saying, well, what are the next 25 or 35, or I think our horizon is 2050, if I'm not mistaken, so it's 25 years. What's the next 25 years going to look like? And I have to tell you that it's a lot harder doing this work now when this city is one of the best. It's happening. We're in the middle of boom times and exciting new changes. And the question now is really a different question, right? It's not a question of how do we get something started? Where's the spark? The question now is how do we spread this opportunity? How do we shape a city of the future that is just really, again, kind of on the verge of changing once again? So I wanted to talk about that briefly because, planning and zoning in the minds of most people, it's really dry and boring. We write regulations. She's got to make interpretations and figure out what do all the things mean, and you come in and you read all this stuff that's in matrices and text that's barely intelligible. But the truth is, all that boring language really comes from ideas. It's about how do you generate an image and then basically deconstruct it into recipes in a way. I mean, in a way, maybe planning and zoning and these things that we do, maybe they're just recipes of how we're going to cook the city. And that's what we're going to talk about today. So it's not perfect. We're trying our best to try to figure it out. We have a tremendous amount of interest in the city and pressure that's coming here and things that are going to be really good for the future. We have new hospitals of high quality coming. We have financial and biotech and all kinds of new investment of very highly educated people who want to be here. And they want to be here for several reasons, but I think one of the most important reasons is they like the way the city feels. It's got a nice vibe. It's got a great feel. It's got the kind of place where you want to go outside and walk around. You don't have to cross 6 lanes of traffic, and you don't have to deal with mobs of narrow sidewalks and all the problems of places like where I live in Miami, right? Where you've got millions of people and your sidewalk is 5 feet wide, and how do you manage all that? And everything's got a 10-story parking garage, and you don't even see what the building looks like. We don't have that here. And so I want to emphasize that part of our plan is this vision of the future, but it all gets deconstructed again into the boring zoning stuff, which land use attorneys live on, and developers try to find the best way they can to manage within those codes. But what I'm going to do is present to you the thinking in a way that I hope can be understandable. And then we're going to ask you questions about preferences, because people like to see surveys that help justify what we're doing. So, keep that in mind. You will be asked some questions. So I guess it's up to me to do this. So I will. So we're going to share what we've learned, which is actually not a tagline. We've had so many meetings, you wouldn't believe it. This is a diagram that has no particular importance other than to reflect that we've had tons of meetings with community groups, with development groups, with agencies, with public officials, with condo associations. I mean, you name it. We have had so many meetings, and we've been taking all that information and we're trying to reduce it down into something that we can understand. Basically, we're very interested in the vision because the ideas that we're going to be presenting are the ideas that we're then going to translate into the regulations. So ultimately, all of this work is in the spirit of trying to understand how to shape a future city, and at that point in time, how we're going to create it into zoning language. The tools that we use, and maybe the better way to look at it is the things that we're most interested in making sure that we protect are the culture and character of the city. We don't want the growth to undermine what's already happened, but we also want the growth to enhance to a greater degree what's already happening, so it becomes a better city. Part of that is going to be transportation and mobility, which is not our task at this time. Ours is to create a vision and write zoning, but we can't do that without an assumption. It's a very important assumption that somewhere along the line here in the future, we're going to have a better transportation system, because the intensity and the creation of new opportunity will bring more people. And with more people will come the thing that everybody hates, which is traffic. And if we don't get our hands around traffic and congestion, then everybody starts to feel even more unhappy about that. So it's very important that we address those things. And they don't necessarily have to be, steel, hard transit systems. They need walkability, places where bicycles can travel safely, shuttles. Instead of being in a car, there's already systems here where people can call up and for free get a free ride. We need more of those things, and that's part of what we're talking about. We need community development, which is mostly housing. We need more housing in the city. We need affordable housing in the city. And you're going to see that a lot of what we're setting up is going to be providing, I hope, the means for that to happen, so that as more development happens of all economic types, there's also a way for the lower economic opportunities to also grow and become more viable. So affordable housing will be part of it. And then finally, open space and resiliency, because we don't want to see just more buildings. We want to see more open space, more parks, more green areas, more shade trees, all of that type of thing. So we're looking at that to happen. So some of the really basic ideas are, we want to protect oh look, I can use this. We want to protect the existing culture in the parts of the city that have already been built. We know that the waterfront, which used to have a referendum that defined how much could be built, is going to be the skyline of the future. And it will not be a continuation of a low scale front edge of the city. It's the most valuable property, the best views. So rather than try to resist, we're trying to figure out how to sculpt it. So we have ideas on that. We have the Northwest District, which has not taken advantage of the benefits that the rest of the city has had so far. And we're not going to talk about that much tonight, because we still have more public meetings to have with them, so that we can understand better what the community really wants. Excuse me. So, and then we're looking at this western edge of the city, I think, as really the new opportunity zone. There's a lot of vacant land. There's a lot of governmental buildings. There's a lot of parking lots that are just surface parking lots. And with Vanderbilt coming, and with Cleveland Clinic coming, and with transportation initiatives needing to happen, educational opportunities, this is really the prime opportunity in terms of available land and the conversion of underutilized property into something that we hope will be the continuation of the great urban feel of the city. So ultimately, what we're trying to do with this arrow is show you that we want to connect the lake and the intracoastal into one coherent, urban core, walkable, landscaped, and really coherent in terms of the way it works. When we came here 20 years ago, they were totally separated. There was no relationship. We had the privilege of working with Brightline to be their urban planner and their architect. We designed the station that you have here as architects, but we made it very clear to them that the station needed to be on the west side of the tracks, so that that could be the focal point for connecting Clematis and Rosemary. And that has worked out really, really well, because Rosemary and Clematis are now basically joined, and there's real continuity in the city, which didn't exist 20 years ago. The other thing is the quality of life issues, where we see streets as open space, really. We think that there's opportunities, as you can see, with all the great work done here on Clematis and how beautiful it is compared to the way it used to look. There's really good opportunities for new infrastructure and for landscaping and for streetscaping. And we want to encourage open space and green space. So one of the big ideas that we're going to be presenting in more detail eventually is this idea of the Flagler waterfront being more integrated into what becomes the city's Central Park. Now, we know there's been a lot of conversation about that over the years. We just saw an article that the My Waterfront group was thinking about maybe reducing some of the traffic lanes. I would say that would be the minimum I would expect to happen. Our vision is really more bold than that. We're thinking that we should really make it a park and have it be integrated, not so divided, not so spread out. It needs to be something special, because when you get down to the end of Clematis and you look out, excuse me, it's not what it should be. And I think there's just an incredible opportunity there. And then we also want, as we develop this western edge, to make sure that we're building in new parks. We're opening up more streets. Those blocks are super long. They're way too long to be walkable. We need to break up those parcels. So that's the benefit of zoning. We can make sure that no matter who builds what, we can demand that there be gaps so that you can move across those blocks in a way that'll be more comfortable. And we have other multimodal ideas for a transit hub near the Tri-Rail, and possibly one by the convention center here for that underutilized parking garage. So we're thinking, if we can bring the cars into the city and get them out of the way, then we can move on to shuttles and connections and other forms of transit and not have everybody move around in their car. So we have certain principles that we've been working on. Not all of them apply to every single neighborhood. In some cases, we're looking at how to break down large blocks. In other cases, we're looking at preserving views. And in other cases, we're looking at tall buildings that are sculpted so that they don't occupy the whole frontage of the block, to allow the view to continue into the inner parts of the city. So we have a lot of different ideas. I'm not going to go through all of them, but these are principles that we're looking at. Now, for those of you who know the development of the city, there's this concept of TDRs, which stands for Transfer of Development Rights. And this was actually started before we got here, where if I have a historic property and I have development rights, but I don't want to develop them, I can sell them. And that way, two things get accomplished. Somebody gets more area for their project, but the place that is sold protects that property from being overdeveloped. So you end up protecting and developing as a kind of corollary. Well, the city is almost out of TDRs. They've pretty much all been sold. There's a bunch left, but not enough to really make a big difference. So that presents two issues. One issue is people have spent millions of dollars buying TDRs, so you can't just give away additional benefits without undermining the investment they made. So there needs to be continued investment. And then the second thing is, the bonus that comes from purchasing allows for that money to be used for public purposes. So we're thinking, this is really a good opportunity, since it's already started, that we go ahead and provide for incentives that can be purchased, but they're no longer TDRs. They're really incentives that you're buying. They're bonuses. Excuse me. So what we're doing is we're saying, okay, we're going to have a base height, which I'm going to show you, and then we're going to have an incentive height. And the base floor area and the incentive floor area. So right now, TDRs are selling for about $17 a square foot. So if I want to buy TDRs and I want 1,000 square feet, that's going to cost me $17,000, and then the city will allow you that 1,000 square feet. And that's pretty much how it works. But it's very limited and very defined. So we're saying, okay, let's open that up. Let the base be $17 per square foot, but then we have three different options because not everything is going to benefit in the same way. So the money that's spent for the incentive will go into predominantly a housing trust fund for affordable housing, but it also could go for other public benefits that the city wants to utilize. So in option A, excuse me, it would go to the affordable housing, but because we believe that we don't want to make more low income housing, it has to be mixed into mixed income housing. So there's people of different incomes living in neighborhoods, not just rich people in one place and poor people in another place. It has to be integrated. Option B is if I find a property that can be redeveloped, I could put the affordable housing in my project on another property, but I have to build mixed income property. That exists in the city today, but it hasn't been highly utilized. So why do we offer that? Because in option B and option C, because of the income that's coming into town, if I have a condo and it's occupied by very wealthy people, it's not going to be viable for someone on an AMI, an average median income of a sustainable but low income, to be able to contribute into the costs of the housing of the HOA and the condo association. It's setting up a position where it's not going to work so well. So we're also providing an option where you can basically buy your way out, but it's going to cost you $75,000 a unit. So the idea is we want the mixed income and we want the affordable housing to be mixed into the project that's being proposed. But if you're willing to spend a lot more money, you can offer to buy it out under certain conditions, which we're thinking are condos. Because it's very hard to manage condos with a kind of a subsidized buying with people with a lot of money who are going to want to change the pool and put on this and change the furniture. No one's going to be able to afford to stay there. It's going to create a lot of headaches. So we're trying to avoid those things. And then in the areas of Northwest and other designated targeted areas that are currently areas of lower income, we're identifying those areas as optimal for the development of mixed income housing. So that if I'm here on the waterfront and I want to move my affordable units to another location, I can move them to these targeted neighborhoods, but I have to build mixed income housing and I have to provide affordable, and it has to be done as part of the project, and it cannot be done later. It has to be done at the same time. So basically, that's the idea. Now, I mentioned that we have a map. The map is existing base heights. And I won't take you through all of this, but the different colors represent different heights. But basically, what I want to draw your attention to is the dark colors are 25 stories, which is the Clear Lake and part of City Place. And that's the base height. Everything above that has been incentive height. Now, one of the things that I'd like to draw your attention to is in 2007, this is the map that we created. The map was protect clematis, let City Place grow, and then let's put our attention here at putting together clematis and rosemary so that we can kind of weave together the city. And you'll notice that most of the rest of the city didn't really have a lot of definition because we didn't really have a lot of development going on. So the thinking was, let's first get the economic core set, and then we can start developing the neighborhoods. So 20 years later, this is where we are. In 2007, we said, well, one way to do that, if I'm going back to this circle where we're trying to increase opportunity and spark redevelopment, remember, this is almost 20 years ago, we said, well, let's take this area on the western edge of Quadrille and create an incentive for a Class A office building or a full service hotel with conference centers. And if somebody is willing to do that, we're going to give them extra. We're going to let them go to 25 stories. We're going to give them opportunities to have more floor area. And it can only happen in these zones where the darker color can happen. It cannot happen anywhere else. And that's how we sparked it. That is exactly what happened. And we had the good fortune of Florida East Coast saying we're going to do a passenger rail. And that's why I said we placed the train station right here. And we did everything we could to make sure that we could get that one zone to happen. And that's the story of what happened 20 years ago. So in existing incentive height, that's where we had it. But the way we wrote the code back then is after 2 or 3 of those projects, the incentive would die. It would disappear. It would sunset. We didn't want an incentive to live forever. It was never our intention. So when Jeff Green came in to do this project, which I believe stacked the both incentives in a different site, the idea was, well, let's let that happen because that would be good. But in order to justify it and in order to make sense of it, because it was not this time, it was years ago, there was a decision to go ahead and run it all the way down. And we got a lot of new buildings in this area, but none of them were 25 stories. They're all 8 stories, 10 stories, 12 stories. So I wanted you to understand that because there's a history to how that happened. We did show zoning changes in these areas, which have never really resulted in much, but everything east of Quadrille has really been redeveloped, and there's a lot of new projects, a lot of great new courtyards, public spaces, green areas on the corners. I mean, it's turned into a great neighborhood. And of course, City Place keeps growing and growing, and that's been fantastic. So in terms of the potential incentive height, and I'm taking time to explain this because not everyone's going to be happy. Our thinking is, well, you can give with one hand and you can take away with another. Now, why would we do that? Well, one reason is we don't necessarily want to have every single block in the city be the same height and have all the same intensity. We want to sculpt the future of the city. So we're saying to ourselves, well, this area in here has seen a lot of development, and so far it hasn't really been taking advantage of the new incentive that the city allowed. And if we're going to try to now spark the West, which was kind of our new concept, let's get that area cooking. Let's protect what has been built in the last 20 years. Let's take that middle zone and keep it more like 15 stories, 12 stories, somewhere in there. We can do the incentives up to 15, but maybe not give it to 25, because now we're looking at generating major incentive opportunities in the West. And I'll explain in a moment also Flagler, because the waterfront also is going to be the new skyline, and it wants to be beautiful and spectacular, and we think that it's appropriate to allow height on the water's edge. And we think there's opportunistic reasons to allow height in the western segment. City Place is already pretty high. So we're thinking, let's take this area in purple and not let it go to the same height. We know that not everyone is going to be happy, but that's our thinking. So that's a beginning point. I'm saying this is not a final idea, but I wanted to explain why we're doing it. so that you understand how we can manage that in the zoning code. So when you look at it in section, and a section is a cut through, not everyone understands these drawings. Remember, I told you this is boring stuff. Not for everybody. But if you go from the lake here to the intercoastal there, and you look at the TOD and the QBD and all the different designations, we want to protect Clematis Street by keeping it low. But on the edges, once you're a block away, it can go up. So we want Clematis to be that main corridor running east-west that keeps the character that has been developed that we all like. But when you go to Ivernia, by example, we're saying, okay, here's the base, 10 stories, but we're going to give you 15 stories of incentives, which means that major offices can come in, the technology businesses, excuse me, the educational opportunities that are going to be related to Vanderbilt. So we want that area to grow, but we're doing it through incentives so that we can get money into the coffers to help build the other things we need, the parks, the affordable housing, et cetera, et cetera. And then you can see here, it drops down to the 2 blocks I mentioned, and then here it goes back up again on Flagler. So basically what we're saying is let's protect that area to the east to keep it more or less like it is. Let's protect Clematis to keep it lower scale, and let the rest of the city grow as long as it grows well. So with that in mind, you can see in blue, the Flagler Waterfront District is interrupted by the green, which is Clematis, which will have lower scale until it gets west of Rosemary. And then the area in here called TOD will be the opportunity for innovation, transit, education, housing, offices, all the new technologies, all the people that want to come here. We're hoping that this becomes the area that becomes the next success story for the city. And the area in purple, we're trying to keep more or less at the same scale so that we're not interrupting the basically the part of the city that we've already built. So when you go through it overall, we have these residential districts in yellow that we're going to talk about. Northwest Neighborhood, I mentioned we're going to have more information about that later. Brailsford and Providencia. Suffice it to say that we think we need to make some improvements here along Dixie, because Nora is up here. We know that that is happening, and it's going to turn out really well, I think. But we think that Dixie needs to get more attention, so we're going to be focusing there. But we want to make sure that this area in here, that's Brailsford, is going to be low scale, single family. It's going to keep the same character that it has, so we're not proposing much in the way of change. When we get to Providencia Park, same story. We're really proposing just some elements here at the transition and the corner, but the rest of it we want to keep as a historic residential neighborhood that still continues with its current character. When we get to what the city calls the special districts, Northwest, Nora, Lofton, the Flagler Waterfront, and Clematis, we have opportunities. In the Lofton, we're looking at this as a transition zone from the higher urban core down to the single family residential, where we might end up with buildings that are more intensely developed, but not very much so, so that we end up with a nice walkable scale, but only in the corner, not in the rest of the district, only where it's next to the higher zones. And then when we get to Flagler, we've had really most of our difficulty, because Flagler, unlike the rest of the city, does not have uniformity in the parcels. Some parcels are immense. Some parcels are small. It's very hard to get a handle on how to develop a recipe, back to that food analogy, when we have such different ingredients, right? So we're looking at that. So we're dividing it up into the south and the north with this intentional gap at Clematis because we want that to end in the new Central Park. So we're looking at the Flagler district as really a southern edge and a northern district. And with that in mind, we're looking at sculpting the buildings. So our thinking is let the buildings come up higher, but once you get to a certain height, you can no longer have the tower. So in other words, instead of building the building all the way across the frontage, you're going to have to limit your tower to a piece of the frontage. And what that does, as we're trying to show in this yellow, is that it allows for people back here to look all the way through the city and see sky, have separation between the towers, because otherwise, because of the value of the land, there would be a continuous wall of towers. The only gaps would be the right-of-way of the city. So we're saying, okay, you can go high, but you got to go thin. And if you're going to be building your parking structure, you're going to have to put apartments all the way up 100%, no gaps, so that when you look at it and you see the new park and you see the tree canopy and you see apartments, you're not looking at parking garages. So we're making sure that none of the buildings will have visible parking garages, that it will look like this kind of city where every single building has a lot of architectural attention, because it has to be constructed and designed in a way that takes advantage of the high value of the property, and allows for the opportunity for the cityscape, either looking at it to be more exciting and also from behind it to see through it and not have it be a wall of buildings like a lot of other cities have. And we have looked at this from the standpoint of, we've actually tested essentially every single property. We want to keep the parking podiums manageable. We don't want things getting too high. We want to have a lot of open space. We also are looking at, on the south, a setback of 100 feet before you start building. So if you're going to take one of those large properties and build a large project, you're basically going to have to give up your first 100 feet into landscape and publicly accessible open space, which then, if you imagine the Central Park, rings the whole Flagler Crescent. So you'll basically have the feeling of a park that goes through the entire intracoastal image, which we think will be monumental in terms of what it does for the city for the next 25 years, 50 years, forever and ever, because it'll always be open space. So we're looking at it from that point of view. In terms of what we call the urban core districts, Quadrill Gardens, the business district, the TOD area, Clear Lake, and the Okeechobee Business District and City Place, this area in this pinky purple color, we're looking at, like I mentioned, taking away some of the incentives east of Quadrill so that we can keep that scale similar to what it is today. And these types of buildings, this type of walkability and green space, and the city has been phenomenal at making sure that people do what they're supposed to, which is to set the buildings back and open up the corners and having it be publicly accessible. Got to tell you, it's a unique experience in cities. Most buildings come right to the property line. There's nothing more than sidewalk. So we want to continue that idea. But when we get to the business district and the transit-oriented district, you can see in the picture how much vacant land there is and how much surface parking lots. So our thinking is we've got to create a lot of incentive, because we don't really see the point of the IRS offices being in this location any longer, or a lot of the other governmental uses that had a purpose here because land was cheap and you could park on the surface. That's not the case anymore. And we want to provide a lot of financial incentive for people to be able to buy those out relocate them somewhere else, and basically finish the city all the way back toward the Tri-Rail station. So we're looking at fairly intensive development that we know for a fact is what the new business model is. If you have a think tank, if you have a financial a business where you're going to be moving your headquarters to West Palm Beach, you're going to need 400,000 square feet of continuous office space. You're not going to want to have it in 4 different buildings. So we're providing the opportunity for those to come. But because of the fact that, as I showed you here, let me tell you, where is it? That section. There you go. This white is area you got to buy. The brown is what you get. So we're going to generate not only money, but we're going to generate more open space. We're going to generate public amenities. We're going to have more park space. So if you're going to build a building like I'm showing you that is pretty sizable, you're not going to go wall to wall, and you're going to have to spend money on public amenities. So that's really the story. Without getting into minutia, I wanted to make sure that I could explain this in the context of kind of the reasoned approach, without getting into what our task actually is, which is to write the zoning and the regulations. But it's really important for you to understand that when you look at those codes, when we're doing them, we've tested every block, we've tested every city component, and it's the result of an idea. It's not an arbitrary idea about where we're stepping back and what the setback is. There's a reason for it. So with that in mind, I'm now at the end. And Grace or Darius, you're going to conduct a survey where you get to do it with your phone. And then we'll take some questions and let everybody get back to their evening. Thank you.
Thank you, Bernard. As Bernard mentioned, if you can get your phone handy and then scan the QR code that you see there so that we can start the survey. There's also another way to do it. You can go to menti.com and then enter the code that's shown here, 81055887. I'm going to give you a couple minutes and are we ready? No. Let us know if you need some help. Maybe you can help them, Shana. You entered the code, yes. Yes, you have to wait. No, you just have to wait until I actually start presenting. Yes. Okay. Are we ready then? Yes. Sure. And if you need assistance, just let us know. You know. Yeah. Just start presenting so that you can see it now. Okay, we're gonna go with the first question. These are gonna be related also. Yes, exactly. More related to general principles. And then we just want to get a sense of who's here in the audience. So the first question is, do you live or work in the downtown area? Do you live, work, live and work, or are visitor? Seems like there's a lot of people working. We have about 46 people participating, so that's a good number. We have about 10 more people still waiting on their answer for this.
Remember to hit submit.
Correct. Okay, good. Seems like there's a lot of people that live and work here in the area. Okay, we're gonna go to the next slide. Which of the following public realm priorities are most important to you in downtown West Palm Beach? You can select up to 3. We have more public open space, better walkability and pedestrian connectivity, public waterfront access, slower traffic, safer streets, or incentive for public benefits like affordable housing, parks, mobility, hubs, or any other that you think. That's gonna be the next question, actually. Seems like there is a kind of like, well, things all now is changing more with all public space, better walkability and pedestrian connectivity seems to be the number 1. Incentive and public waterfront access seems to be equal. I'm gonna wait a couple more minutes to be, those people who are still waiting. We're waiting at least 10 more people here. Yes, you can see here. Yes, it's okay. Do we need a couple more minutes? You just need to hit submit, remember. Whenever you hit your answer, hit submit. Okay. So better walkability and pedestrian connectivity seems to be the number 1 answer. Okay, next question. Do you support expanding the mix of land uses, for example, research, tech, education, in appropriate areas of the downtown? Yes, no, not sure. Okay, many yeses. Seems to be definitely the number 1 answer. We're gonna give a couple more minutes because we've been having around 42, 43. Would you support allowing extra height for development capacity in exchange for providing public benefits, like affordable housing, breaking long blocks with public passages, etc.? Yes, no, maybe, depending on the benefit of her. Seems like yes, it's the number 1 answer, but maybe depending on the benefit of her is also up there as number 2. We have a couple more people waiting on them. Seems like yes, and maybe depending on the benefit of her, like kind of similar. So with yes being number 1. We're gonna go to the next question. What other benefits would you like to see prioritizing downtown West Palm Beach beyond the ones that we listed before? This is a word cloud, so you can type in your answer and it will pop up here. Shade street trees, more density, historic preservation, transit. Density seems to be the number 1 answer. Shade trees seem to be up there also. Education. Parks, density, education, shade trees. Are we waiting on a couple more people? 37. So it seems like density, mobility, or transportation are number one as one of the priorities that you guys want to see here in the downtown. Transit, parks, shade trees and culture, safety, health also. So we just gonna go to the next question. How important is it to you that buildings remain lower in height, less than 3 stories, for example, in historical residential neighborhoods like Westport Park or Providencia Park? No important, somewhat important, neutral, important, or very important. Well, thanks, it's either not important or very important. Or neutral. Okay, I think we're gonna go to the next question, but it looks like very important and number one, but very also not important, important. Now so what important. Okay, so there are gonna be a couple slides now that have a map on the left because we wanted for you to get oriented with some of the districts that we're gonna be asking questions about. So in this case, in transit rich or central areas such as TOD, which is this area here, and QBD districts, and the waterfront areas such as Blackley Waterfront, what you see here in blue, how do you feel about the potential for taller buildings, example 15 to 25 stories, with added public benefits? So now you're gonna see here your answers. So you see they're gonna be support taller buildings with public benefits, do not support taller buildings, support only moderate heights, 15 stories or less, or not sure.
Yeah, that should be something.
Things like support taller buildings with public benefits is number one so far. We have a couple more people waiting for their answer. We support only moderate heights, 15 stories or less as number two. Okay, next one. How important is it to break up large downtown blocks, especially west of Brightline, by creating new dedicated passageways for walking and biking? Not important, somewhat important, neutral, important, or very important. Seems like very important is the number one answer. Really important is number two. One more. So we are gonna have a result probably with the city will have it, and then we can send to you. Yes, but at the end, this is basically the result of it. What you're seeing here is the result of what?
Changing the screen, so we can't go back to see what.
So at the end of the presentation, at the end, after we're done with this meeting, we're gonna have a PDF that shows the results of everything.
Thanks.
So now when we go to Flagler Waterfront District, in the Flagler Waterfront District, located along Flagler Drive between Intracoastal and Olive Avenue, we support the potential modifications of Flagler Drive to create a larger public waterfront promenade and park space. Strongly support, neutral, opposed, or strongly opposed. Going through it seems like strongly support is the number one answer so far. Anyone want more? Seems like strongly support is the number one answer, weak support is number two, and no strongly false. To preserve views and improve waterfront access in the same Flagler waterfront district, the plan proposes a general setback from the water for development. Do you support this idea? Yes? No? Not sure. So far, yes has been the number one answer. Waiting on a couple more. Okay, so yes, has been the number one answer with 33 votes here. How important is it to you that towers along Flagler remain slender and spaced to preserve open views and breezes? You can rank this from number one to from not important or five very important.
I'm sitting town and vote for green space along the Flagler and then vote for towers and totally confused.
It's a slender tower.
This is talking more about the shape of the tower. So Bernard explained in the presentation that we're looking at proposing that some of the towers are thinner, basically, so that we can create a better view corridor for the entire of the tower. I'm sorry.
Are we going to knock down all the existing buildings on Flagler?
No, this is for new development. These are recommendations that we're gonna be doing for the code for new developments. Exactly, it doesn't affect anything. It's not.
If you're redeveloping Flagler, you have to knock the old buildings down. I can't believe
To go higher, correct. Correct. These refer to the developments that are gonna take advantage of Lake Center. So it seems that, very important is the highest, selection.
Or what the minimum was. Is that what's the comparison?
Let's finish the survey.
We have a couple more. In the Providencia Park District, just north of 4th Street between Dixie Highway and Olive Avenue, currently allows residential and professional offices only from the PPO PD subdistrict. Should small scale commercial uses like gyms, cafes, restaurants be allowed here? Yes, allow small scale commercial uses such as gyms, cafes, etc. No, keep the area residential and professional office only, not sure. Seems like yes, allow small scale commercial usage, gyms and cafe would have been the number one answer. On the Brownsburg Park District, you support reimagining alleys and mostly residential neighborhood northeast of downtown and north of 7th Street as shared spaces for pedestrian and parking access. Yes, no, sure. Seems like yes has been the number one answer so far. Yes, I'm not sure.
I need two yeses to ensure 2 no's. Seems like yes is given over one answer. The Lofting District north of downtown core is envisioned as a livable mid-rise neighborhood up to 15 stories closer to the waterfront. We also should add that it's envisioned as a transition district, as Bernard had mentioned before. Do you support this direction? Yes, no, not sure. Seems that yes is the number of answer. The people support this direction. This area near the Brightland and Triangle Station allow buildings up to 25 stories as part of the framework. Do you support this level of growth here? Yes, no, only with stronger support benefits required. Seems like yes is number one. Maybe that has to it.
Yeah.
But only with stronger public benefit requirements as number two. The last question, do you have any additional comments or suggestions about how zoning and urban design should shape the future of downtown West Palm Beach? This is gonna be a, you can type in whatever you want, it's gonna be a work club. Tech City and walkable seems to be a common response. Being affordable, affordability. Public spaces, safe, great architecture, mobility, connectivity, shade trees. You have a client where people missing? Seems like density, walkable, affordable, connected, shade trees, and great architecture has been the main answers. This concludes our questions. Thank you so much for joining and our conversation and answering these questions. These are going to be very important for us and the ones that we're doing.
We can add over now for some questions if anyone has something specific question about what you.
Yeah.
Hi, I'm Mike Schmidt from the Downtown Neighborhood Association Board. And by the way, thank you and Grace for meeting my Downtown Neighborhood Board. That was back in April or May. And one of the things that we emphasize with you, because we're hearing it from downtown residents, is with all the increased building heights, building units, office space, blah, 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 there's a deep concern about traffic, parking, traffic flow, things like that. One of the suggestions that, because in one of your prior slides, you mentioned about traffic flow and mobility, bike lanes, different ways of getting around, is that one of the problems that I have seen, certainly in my neighborhood, and certainly in this guy's neighborhood, is right across the street from me, is that there's a lot of double parking on the streets of delivery vehicles, residents, because there were some buildings that were approved back in the day that had either inadequate parking to serve their needs, or else they had such a low ceiling in the garage that larger vehicles such as garbage trucks, delivery trucks, AC guys, plumbers, whatnot, they couldn't fit in there, so they're forced to park on the street. So what I was trying to recommend is, as part of your goal, and I think it's a very noble goal, to increase bike traffic and increase traffic flow as part of all this, is to try to convince the powers that be that buildings should fully accommodate their own parking, and also they should be designed so that garbage deliveries, contractors and everything can all be internal within that building instead of having to double park in streets. Pretty good. Okay.
There it goes. Sure.
I'm totally confused about South Flagler, because that's where I live, and it's totally developed except the green spaces. So why are you talking about building taller buildings and thinner buildings? I'm all for thin buildings and for setbacks, but where?
Sure. Remember, this is a 25-year plan. This is not about changing anything that exists. You don't have to worry. It doesn't change anything that's existing. But over time, things change, and we're trying to be ahead of the curve, not behind it. So we say, we know the economics are such that people are going to want to build bigger, broader, taller, because the values and the views and the opportunities are fantastic. So we're saying, at some point in time, if you decide to buy a project and demolish something, this is the future you're gonna have to live up to, so that 50 years from now, there'll be some controls over what the city still looks like. And that's what we're doing. Remember, this is the future. This is not addressing the current.
The increase of all these buildings, have you considered all these electric bikes on the sidewalks and moped, well, with all the people milling about downtown, in the downtown area, it's very, very dangerous. And I think we need to consider strongly bike lanes and getting all these electric vehicles off of the sidewalk.
We are considering those issues, but that's not our task. Our task is what's built within the property lines. But we are definitely considering it because we're talking about more open space, more parks, bike lanes, trying to decongest. But you raise a good point. I don't really know the answer because the scooters and the electric bikes, they're definitely taking over many cities.
And
They-
many cities are regulating them.
Right, and I think the point you're making, which Anna is writing down, is that one of the comments is the city should be considering regulating. It's just not in our job. to
Yeah,
do.
I can tell you the city is considering that. We adopted recently an update of the mobility plan that includes bike infrastructure. And the city is also working on a citywide mobility plan with a bicycle plan included as part of it. So mobility as bike, scooters, electric bicycles and all that is being considered as a plan for the downtown and for the entire city. It's the vision or or the intent is that we want to offer more alternative modes of transportation for people, so they don't have to just drive. And that includes offering a more comfortable and adequate infrastructure for bicycles, scooters, and all the other alternatives. So that is included as part of that. And is the intention to try to provide more infrastructure for that, so people can safely walk, but also safely bike and have other modes of transportation.
So when should we see this plan come about?
The bicycle master plan should be coming early next year for a discussion with the board. I think they have been already doing public meetings, and it will be coming for approval for city commission earlier next year.
The Palm Beach website forbids electric bikes on running trail or on sidewalks.
Thanks. Was that done? I'm sorry, is that?
The question I have is it's kind of surprising that we haven't had any discussion at all about high water mitigation or sea level rise. We talk about tall buildings on the waterfront. What, you know, where does the mitigation of these potentialities or certainties, whichever side of the fence you live on, enter into your planning?
Oh, that's a great question and a great point. The scope of our work does not actually include a deep dive into the mitigation or resiliency issues. It's really about the zoning code, but FEMA and high water lines will be affecting the building designs and the building codes. So they are by definition going to be considered according to the existing regulations. But when it comes time to be dealing with the new park spaces, the waterfront edge, marinas, all of that, I'm sure that there will be more conversation about it, but it's just not part of our scope, so we don't have it included in our vision plan.
That was a great question, sir. And a related question is about like water management and resources for the additional commercial and residential buildings. Is there a plan for sort of how that will be managed so that like everyone across West Palm Beach, not just downtown, is getting water when they need it?
Again, same question and unfortunately same answer. We don't have that expertise within the group that we've assembled. It's more about land use and zoning.
So that is not to say that we are not considering. The city has a water master plan, and recently we are actually right now going through the process of updating the comprehensive plan to address some of the supply of predictability of the supply for water for the entire city. So the fact that it's not part of this, that doesn't mean that the city is not looking at it.
It's just not part of it.
Exactly.
This presentation has been wonderful for the future master plan. I love it. Thank you. My question is for the present. You're talking about mobility and transportation for the public. There used to be a trolley running around, which was very nice. And I know there's been experimentations with no driver, vehicles, and I don't think it's working. I was wondering, is there any plan for the present or the near future for a better transportation system like the trolley we used to have?
Yes, there is a plan. WPB or Right WPB that you are referencing as the test pilot is basically that informed the new plan. And right now, the city is in negotiations with a new provider that will be selected, that will include point-to-point service, or Tanya, how do you call it? On-demand service that will service east of I-95 and will include also a new fixed route that will connect north and south with the downtown to provide basically an alternative mode of transportation for people so that you don't have to drive to downtown and try to decongest.
And a spot at the Kravis Center would be nice.
Okay. Thank you. And that will, it's in negotiations right now, so early next year you will see more action on that.
Can you tell me, this proposed master plan, if it's passed, is it enacted like a law? Is it something that must be followed? Is it all of the details that you've suggested if they go into a plan? Or are the commissioners and the zoning people allowed to give variances and changes in height restrictions willy-nilly like they have?
Yeah, great question. My understanding is that we will be creating recommendations for review and discussion at the commission level. If and when they are accepted in full or with modifications, those will become the policies of the city. And specifically, the zoning will become the new zoning that will be regulating the city.
But it's a policy, so they can change it.
Of course.
They can make
It is zoning, it will be the zoning and land development regulations. These recommendations will be translated, as Bernard mentioned, on the boring part of the zoning regulations that we basically describe how tall the buildings can be, what are the setbacks, where the use is permitted and all that. Having said that, I mean, if you are referencing it can be changed, yes, this can be changed and it has to follow the process. One thing that is important to mention, I mean, the city is not static. We change the things vary. I mean, the needs from the city change from time to time. So it is important to have the flexibility to adjust, change the regulations depending on the circumstances. The intention, however, is to have, once you have a master plan that guides your development, as Bernard said, we have had these master plan decorum rules for 25 years. So it is the intention to have kind of a level of predictability, but that doesn't mean that over time things don't change and the city and the administration, based on input from the community, could modify those rules.
Well, here's the thing. As a resident in this area and downtown, it seems to me that the intention is to money for the developers. It's not, going through this whole process and then they can change whatever they want. I mean, I applaud you for doing all of this work and researching all of this and coming up with these different ideas. I don't agree with all of them, but I think it's excellent. But really, if it means nothing, then why do all?
But it's very hard to make these changes. You have to go through a process, you have to get them approved by the city commission. One of the things that I think is the most successful about this city, and we've worked in many, is that they really hold the line on these regulations. So once the regulations are approved,
No, they don't. No, they don't. Absolutely. Whoever pays them the most gets.
I don't think that is accurate. I mean, if you see the city that we have been building, and you are enjoying the benefits of a great city. So there's different regulations, yes, that need to be adjusted and changed depending on the priorities of the city. But what we are building is a city that has public spaces, that have quality of landscape, that has a good environment for everybody. So I don't think we are a city that basically allows any development anywhere. We have guidelines and specific rules. And again, that doesn't mean that things do not change, because they do change, because the city changed and the priorities change. But we have certain parameters that we follow, and when things change, they have to go through a process of vetting. What are the impacts? What are the pros and the cons? And then it will be decided if they are appropriate. Yeah. So I worked that one. Any other questions?
Hey, so I like the idea of the waterfront park. I want Flagler, but can you speak more to that? I know it'd be good to have an expanded green space, because the largest green space in the city is Howard Park, which is on the other side of Okeechobee, so it has like a separation from, if you're living downtown, it's kind of hard to get over to. So it would be a great gathering place to have that expanded, but what happens to the traffic on Flagler? Would you imagine it getting like the 2-lane road, or be diverted over to the side, or how would that operate?
well, I mean, I think, first of all, that's a great question. I appreciate the comment. It's to be determined by whoever is selected to actually design the park. It's going to have to deal with traffic. It's going to have to deal with the circulation elements. But the intention is to have an integrated park system that's not separated by different restaurants, cafes, and streets going at angles. And right now it's a very confused and somewhat, I don't know, I hesitate to say, but it's not the most beautiful park system that this city deserves. And the land is there, the acres are there, it could be redesigned in a way that could be fantastic. It will require many things, a traffic analysis, a park design, the decision to try to figure out how property can be realigned in order to get it to function better. But the idea is to let people have this great space right in front of the water where there could be a fabulous gathering space. And we're looking at that beyond that, also on Okeechobee, also throughout the city to create better streetscapes and tree canopies. Where that is part of this plan. We didn't have time to go into all the details, but it will take work. This is what we're doing is we're setting up a framework. The framework will be voted on. When it's voted on and it's accepted, that framework becomes policy. Once it's policy, then people are hired to start design work to understand how to make it work and implement it. So the value of what we're doing is not going to result in our world with us as a design of a park. But if it's accepted and it becomes policy, then it will become affected in reality through a process that requires hiring landscape architects and traffic engineers. But our mission is to try to plan the future as a framework. That's very important. We're not actually in the details. We're just making the suggestions for it to become a policy. I don't know if that helps, but that's what we're about.
Okay, I want to talk about one item that gets a little bit into the weeds, and thank you for all of this, Bernard. And if any of you actually want to see the downtown master plan in action, I'm surprised maybe you haven't talked about this at all. The city has what's called a downtown action committee, which is a group of volunteers that meet once a month, the second Wednesday of every month in the city commission chambers at 9 a.m. So any project that actually needs a variance from the downtown master plan has to get approved by this commission. So if you think that any developer can just do whatever they want on any parcel, that's totally not the case. These rules are set, they were set in 2007. Any change, any variance to those rules has to be approved by this board, which the board is elected by the mayor. You serve a 3-year term. I actually serve 2 terms on the deck. And one of the regulations I want to get to the weeds on, because I would always talk about it in the DAC meetings, is the bicycle storage that's required for all of these apartment buildings and high rises. And currently, unless it's changed since I was on the DAC 2 years ago, bicycle storage, which, I mean, if we're promoting mobility, we have to have places for people with their bikes. And I'm sure scooters are going to be part of that, which probably take up a little bit more space than a bike. But the current regulations is 1 bicycle space for every 8 vehicular car spaces for a building. At least that's what it was. So for buildings like the Grand, which was just approved a couple of years ago, I think it has a little over 300 units. The bicycle storage that was required for that building was only 28 bicycle spaces for over 300 apartments. So here we are promoting, we want to have people have bicycles, yet 1 in 8 or whatever. I mean, 28 bicycle parking spaces were available for 3. I mean, I can't even imagine that bicycle storage space trying to get your bicycle in and out. So then you're forcing people to take bicycles up elevators and put them in their apartments, and you're basically disincentivizing people. So I just want that regulation to be looked at while you're.
Thank you for, we're not aware of that.
Okay.
That's great.
Well, thank you very much, everybody, for coming.
Yes.
Just a quick question. I know you mentioned earlier that law will have separate conversation with the historic Northwest. Is that already on the books of when those community meetings will be?
Yes, they are. We have the next meeting with the Northwest Neighborhood on January 29th. It will be at the Heart and Soul Park or the Sunset Beach, one of the two, but they will be announcing the exact location at 6 p.m. January 29th, yes.
Thank you all for coming.
Thank you very much for your feedback.